Hello.
Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi. I just restarted my computer. Can anyone, is my video working? Yes. Hi, Kara, I can see you there. I'm gonna start sharing my screen.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Matt.
Hello, I had joined on the browser, so I wasn't sure if it was going to work correctly or not.
Yeah, it looks like it's working well.
Great.
Are you on Kara's team?
Yes.
Nice to see you both today. Yeah, so we just brought up our agenda. Kara, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes, actually. So just I can put a link to it again, or in the formal meeting notes, but a link to our design proposal that you've all viewed. And but we're starting with gRPC plugin, kind of that, laying the groundwork for that. And so Matt will actually be leading the discussion, but we'd like to discuss how gRPC plugins and Ratify should authenticate, what sort of security around that is desired, if there's been any discussion or if we need to just kick that off.
Yeah, sounds good. I will add it to the agenda. I was hoping for like a demo of my CRD work that's in progress right now, but I'm having some remote machine issues with my machine after the latest Windows update, so I might have to do that next week. So I will add it right here. Okay, my machine is extremely slow while sharing screen, so yeah, there it goes. It finally turned up. gRPC. Okay, I typed something in. I'm just waiting for it to turn. Okay, cool. Let's get started. We typically run through our open PRs in the beginning just to get a quick status of everything. Believe we have 2 PR open, one from Eric and one from Akash. Yeah, Eric's PR is to add a version payload, a version to the response of Ratify payload. Overall, it looks good. It's just to mark it with the version so we can start versioning our response payload. And I just put a question in there, Eric, like you mentioned, it requires some documentation update. Could you put a link to which documentation needs to be updated?
Yeah, I'll add a link. But I need to go through and see all the documents because I think the policy authoring document probably needs to change. So that's the biggest one I could think of, but I'll have to look and see if we reference this response anywhere else. I think that might be it though. But I'll put some more stuff in here.
Yeah, is the doc reference inside the Ratify repository, or does Gatekeeper have any documentation around Ratify?
Gatekeeper doesn't have they don't have any documentation about Ratify, and they have some documentation about the external data response, but this versioning is with respect to what actually goes inside of their payload. So this would be specific to us. And I don't think we have any documentation covering this response outside of GitHub, because I don't think any of it. I think the policy authoring is really the only thing that touches on the response structure.
Okay. Yep, sounds good. Yeah, I've just left the comment in there. And I think Akash have already approved it. Do you want to update the doc as a part of this PR, or do you want to track that separately?
Yeah, I'll update the doc. I'll add it to this, and then should be good.
Okay, thank you, Eric. The next PR. Akash, do you want to quickly give a summary, because Kara and Matt is on the call today, just to describe the change?
Sure, yeah. So this work is to add some more concurrency to Ratify's core execution loop. So specifically, we're adding Go routines at the HTTP server handler. So Gatekeeper would send an external data provider request with multiple subject references. And right now we just are verifying them individually, serially. So now adding a routine there, and then also adding a routine at the artifact verification level. So if you have multiple signatures, for example, previously we would do them one after the other, and now we're going to do all of them concurrently. And then add some more locks for our local or a store cache as well, or auth cache that's required. And then, yeah, that's basically the changes so far. Some initial testing, we're seeing some good improvements on the timeout constraint. So I've tested with 5 containers being deployed in a single pod. It verifies all 5 in parallel, 5 signatures on each container image. So about 20 signatures it's verifying at once, and it can complete it in about 3 seconds or so. So definitely some good improvement there. Running into some request bottleneck issue with ORS. So I'm still looking into that, taking a network trace right now of my pod to see kind of when the requests are firing and when the response is coming, to see where the actual bottleneck is. But hopefully next week I'll have some more stuff to share on that. So.
Yeah, this is great, Akash. I will go through that in the PR in more detail. I just have one question right now. This PR mainly adds the parallel execution, but it doesn't add the executor cache, right? It's adding locks to existing cache we have, but doesn't add new layers of cache.
Yes, that's correct.
Cool, sounds good. Any additional questions or feedback on this before we move on? No? Cool. Yeah, so Jimmy is not here today. He was running into a build issue on the Mac M1 machine. Was hoping that he could share his steps but since it's not here, I think we can move on to the gRPC plugin authentication. Matt, would you like to present your screen, or?
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to present. Just kind of piggybacking off what Kara had mentioned. So that's where we're going to start. And some of the questions that I had were kind of what Kara alluded to, was like, just kind of, is there an existing expectation around the security when it comes to plugins with gRPC? Kind of some conversations that maybe have been had previously. If there are any, I would just like to kind of have an open format to talk about those, just to kind of get the ideas flowing. If there's already been talks around that.
We haven't had any discussions related to gRPCs for the last couple of months. So
Okay.
yeah, feel free to share what you have in mind.
Yeah, so I think from some conversations that we had, Kara and Yomi, I'm not sure if Yomi joined or not, looking through the sort of the existing documentation and having, the plugins be able to connect, there's obviously quite a few mechanisms, approaches that could be taken, whether it's certs or, just credentials. So that's kind of what we were talking through earlier today about, what might be the best approach to take. And I know there was I think it was, Carrie, do you remember the issue? I think it was 44, if I'm recalling correctly. But that's probably what you're referring to from a couple months ago, where there was some brief discussion around, I'm pulling it up here to see.
So there was kind of two issues that we were looking at. There was one that this was from November of last year, but it was a discussion around the internally built plugins being able to communicate with the externally built ones, or the in-tree versus out-of-tree, and talking about using a gRPC connection to support that. So there was that conversation, and then the other one was obviously when Gatekeeper and added the MTLS requirement for external data providers. And I know that at least last time I checked in Ratify, there had not been an implementation to support that or figure out how they wanted to go about supporting that. But the thought was, if there had been a decision or a discussion around that, then we could follow a similar pattern for plugins for Ratify.
Yeah, I don't think we had looked into this too much, because regardless of the mechanism, the initial assumption for the change that we would add was that they would still be all within the same pod. So it would sort of just be like an interface change rather than like an extra network hop. So if we're for external plugins, like outside the Ratify pod, my knee jerk would be to probably follow in the footsteps of Gatekeeper with their MTLS approach. I haven't looked too deeply into what that entails from the Gatekeeper side, because we'd probably have to borrow that sort of design.
That makes complete sense. And yes, this was more, so if they were living in the same pod, then an insecure local connection is acceptable. Is that what sorry, take a step back. We were talking plugins that are binaries like the ones now. You obviously don't worry as much about some of that authentication between Ratify and the plugins.
Yeah, and I guess I should also clarify by saying the current plugins are not just in the same pod, but they're in the same container.
Yeah, they're being built in the same Docker file. Yeah, no, we're totally aware of that as well. I think that the issue that the older issue where some of this was discussed, I was talking about if there were out of tree, so not built but mounted binary plugins, and there was, but now I'm honestly, I've looked at so many of the issues recently and notes on that I might be confusing myself as well. So apologize.
No, I think we historically haven't worried, because I guess at the point where you have the ability to mount arbitrary things into the Ratify pod, you probably have bigger problems than the authentication between your external verifier. So yeah, I mean, I don't think we've really looked into in any depth or have a plan for what we would do about verifier authentication.
Okay, well, would you be comfortable with us coming up with a proposal of different options so that you would have some concrete things to work with and not just a hypothetical discussion? And obviously, Eric, going based off of what, looking at how Gatekeeper has accomplished it or gone about accomplishing adding the MTLS level of security might be also worth. So we could easily do some of that research and bring something to the table to talk about, if that would be amenable to you all. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, yeah, we're gonna have to figure that out for Ratify to work with Gatekeeper anyways. So if we get a free primer, then that's awesome.
Then that will definitely be something we will prioritize tackling, because that is probably one of the more concrete tasks that we can accomplish. So yay, in a timely manner. And we will, I think we will commit to bringing that by next week, by next Tuesday.
Cool. We have a tracking item for that. Should I reassign that from Akash? I think it's currently assigned to you, Akash.
Yeah, it's currently assigned to me, but I switched over to another task, so not really much progress there. So,
Yeah. Do you know the issue number? So
not off the top of my head. I can find it and I can reassign it.
okay. I found the planning board.
Yeah, actually that would probably be easier. Go to the beta milestones, probably under there. Yeah, there it is, 264. Yeah.
Okay. It has a status of hold blocked.
Yeah, I don't know. David added that. So.
Okay, interesting. I don't think we're blocked by anything, right? It's like ready to be investigated.
Yeah, I think we can move forward on it. It was just a prioritization thing. So.
Got it. Yeah, should after this meeting, Kara, should I reassign it to you or assign it to Matt?
Go ahead and assign it to me. I can kind of be the initial catcher for things that our team will handle. And then obviously if I will make sure everyone knows who, if I'm not the point person, would be the person to reach out to specifically.
Yep, sounds great. Cool. Next on the agenda, I was going to, give a demo of the CRD work in progress, but let me see if my machine is working. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I think I have to do the demo next week. But meanwhile, I do have some question to ask Eric about the how Gatekeeper installs their CRDs. So Eric, do you have time to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Cool.
Yeah, I can hear you. I noticed you dropped out and you rejoined.
Okay. Yeah, I was on my phone and I just switched my computer. Yeah, so let me see if I can find a link. But yeah, essentially in Gatekeeper, in their chart, you can find a place where they have a step that runs a separate Docker container. So I think it's in templates, I believe. Let's see. Blah blah blah. Audit, control manager, critical powers manager, blah 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 blah. Validating. Let's see. Upgrade CR. What's an upgrade CRD's hook? I think it might be this. So I think this runs. Yeah, so there you can see the Helm SH hook pre-install, pre-upgrade. So this should be a cluster, and then yes, and then down below, I think, do they just have a pod in here? I believe. So they have cluster role service count,
Yep.
and then job. Yeah, so here they just make one job that runs that runs a container, and that container is what actually does it. So if you go hunt for their pod name or their container name, let's see, blah blah blah, spec service account, blah blah blah, below this containers CRD upgrade, CRD repository. So if you look at the image they use there, and then you look at the Docker file, you see args apply f CRDs. So this is pretty much just a container image that gets a bunch of role assignments that allows it to talk to the API server, and this container applies the CRDs. So
I see. Yeah, just Kara, just to give context, I've been working on the CRDs, and the goal is to have parity with the configuration file. So I have defined the verifiers and the stores as very similar to how Lee had his proposal in the issue. And this, I'm having trouble understanding, like when we when we install Ratify, how does the CRD get installed? So we're also looking at Gatekeeper to see how they install their constraint and constraint template CRDs. So Eric is saying that in their pre-install step, they spin up an image, a container, to install the CRD before they install the Gatekeeper system.
That makes sense. And that might actually be a little cleaner. I had actually been thinking of it from the perspective of there's a scheduler plugin that the upstream team was working on that allows you to for AKS. And it was actually like looking at the main like AKS cache of CRDs to pull in, so that if the scheduler CRD was changed or a new one was pushed, it was doing it like a inline maintenance of it. So, but it does sound like the Gatekeeper approach is a little bit cleaner than that.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Then this would be the approach I'll try out first. And Eric, so on line 97, they have the values image CRD repository, and you think they would have the image being used in the values file?
yeah, so if you go look in the values file and you control F for CRD, you can see there it is, open policy Gatekeeper CRDs. So you'd have to hunt a little bit to find out if this container is, I think I've found it before, but
I've seen the Docker file for this. This file here.
Yeah, so in there, I'm pretty sure this is just an Alpine. Yeah. So this is just Alpine image that they install kubectl, because then they copy all of the CRDs in here, and then they just k-apply them.
Where do you see the k-apply?
It was in the template in the job definition. They passed args. So here they have an entry point, which just is kubectl, and then the args they apply is, or they add is apply and then -r, and then the path to the CRDs, which they're copying into the container here. So every version of that CRD's Docker file contains the CRDs for that version release of Gatekeeper, and they're just k-applying.
Got it. So it was somewhere here that there was the apply command.
Yeah, so right here, the job, yeah. So you can see they just use that image. The entry point is kubectl, and then apply, and then F, and then everything in CRDs. So
Yep. And their CRDs are just some directory here that they.
yes. So I think it's in there, yeah, in charts. And then in CRDs, I think it's this. You'd have to go look at the Docker file again, but I think it's this.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, we can definitely do something similar. Yeah, I'll try it out and let you know how I go.
Cool.
So this happens in the pre-install step, but if they were to do it with the main Gatekeeper install, how would they do it? Would that be a step in the Docker file?
When you say main install, do you mean?
Yeah, do they have a different Docker file with a different Gatekeeper entry point?
They do, yeah. So they actually host a number of images. So they have in the root there, they have a Docker file that is the actual Gatekeeper container. And so that's just called Docker file. And that's the actual Gatekeeper components. So here they build a manager. And this is what's used by everything else. So the other image is just a extremely lean helper image that they use to get around Helm install ordering.
Yeah, I don't really know the Docker file steps in detail. So why can't they just add a step here, before they launch their Gatekeeper manager? Why can't they apply their CRDs here?
I think technically they could. I think it would just complicate it. It sort of crosses some wires and then complicates this container image. So if you were to run, then their entry point would, instead of being manager, their entry point would have to be an entry point.sh, and then they would have to check if CRDs, and then they have to grant the Gatekeeper pod a lot more of the role bindings. They'd have to give a lot more permission. So I think they do it that way to keep the separation of permissions and concerns.
Okay, got it. So the container that applies the CRDs would have more permission than running Gatekeeper.
I believe so, because they have to have the other pod or job that they run has to have permissions to create. And it might be that the permissions are similar, and it's more so just to keep this container just concerned with hosting Gatekeeper. But in either case, I think those two were enough. And also just that it's sort of a hack, and they probably didn't want to introduce the hack into the main container image.
Okay, yeah, got it. I will look into the RBAC role assignments a bit more to see what roles we will need. At the moment, to have the Ratify pod have access to the CRDs, I had to, when I generated the CRDs, KubeBuilder generated a bunch of RBAC definitions. And one of them was the manager role, which says you can read, write, all the CRDs in the new API version. So I basically gave Ratify pod, the service account, the manager role. I think Gatekeeper is doing something similar, but I'll have a look at what role binding is needed to apply the CRDs.
Yeah, got it.
Yep. Cool. That's everything we have today. Let's see who is still in the room. Oh, Sajay is here. David is not here today. Cool. Sajay, Kara, anything else you would like to discuss?
Not from my perspective, no.
Nope, looks good. Thank you.
Okay, we'll see everybody next week. Take care, everyone.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
Thank you.